Hi guys! So I'm trying something a little bit new this month, and that will be a mid-month wrap-up. I normally do my wrap-ups at the end of the month, but I will be in Japan at the end of this month, so that's not really going to be feasible. Plus, I've already read a ton of books, and it would take me forever to get through them anyway, and I don't want to lose all my memories of the books as I go to Japan and all of that, so I'm just going to go over all of the books that I've read in the first half of June, and that also includes a Ghibli-a-thon wrap-up because today is the last day of Ghibli-a-thon. I did read two books that weren't for Ghibli-a-thon, and the first one was The Girl in the Tower by Katherine Arden. This is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy, and I loved this book so much. I thought it was much better than the first one. It's set in historic Russia where all of the fairy tales and folklore come to life, and it follows one girl who can see all of these creatures from Russian folklore, and she's kind of a witch, and it's so good. It's so atmospheric, and you feel so cozy and wintry when you're reading these books. I really loved getting to know the main character more in this book. I felt like this book was much better rounded than the first book. The first book was mainly setting up the world and getting to know the characters, so it felt really slow because you're literally going from like before she was born until she's like 17. And a lot happens, there's a lot of characters and a lot of things that don't seem to add up together in the first book, but it starts coming more together in the second book. And I think the plot was much better developed in this book. The plot focused more on invaders coming and attacking a town and like all of the family drama, and the way that it handled both like the family drama and this whole outer like Russia destroying story, I thought was really well. I think it balanced out the level of like suspense and like drama between the two, because when you think about it, family drama and your sister not really like accepting you is kind of on a lower scale than these invaders coming to burn down like all of Russia's cities, but the way that they handled it in this book made it seem like they were the same level of like danger, and I thought it was done really well. I feel like there was less magic in this, but also at the same time, it looks like book 3 is going to give you a little bit more magic, and I'm really looking forward to it. The series is just so enchanting, and the characters are so well developed, and I really enjoy this world, so I'm so excited to pick up the third one. The next book I listened to as an audiobook on a whim because I was bored at work and I wanted something to listen to and I had no current audiobooks, so I found this, and that's Goodbye Things by Fumio Sasaki. This is a minimalist guide, sort of. It's more of this guy's life story as he goes through his minimalist journey. I don't really read self-help books. I think this is the first self-help book I've read in full. When Marie Kondo's book came out in 2015, I read like half of it while sitting at a bookstore bored, but I never finished it, and I think that's the only time I've read a self-help book. If that kind of counts as a self-help book, I don't know. If you don't know who Marie Kondo is, it's all of that like decluttering Japanese mentality, super minimalist, and not have like anything in your house. So it's along the same line, but this book is not really a guideline like that is. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo is more of like a step-by-step on how to declutter your life, where this one is more like how decluttering has affected him and changed him, and why you should get rid of all of your things, and it can definitely be preachy. And I feel like a lot of things that were mentioned in this book is not going to be feasible for everyone. Like one of the things he's talking about is how he's living life day to day and not thinking about the future. And that makes sense if you're like in a stable job and you don't have to think about the future, but a lot of people are not in that situation, or they're in school or something, and not thinking about the future is probably a very dangerous decision. And some of his conclusions I also didn't really see the logic in. He was saying how like, oh, getting rid of his things makes him more extroverted and like cleaning more, and I was like, okay, yeah, I don't think if I got rid of all my things I would enjoy doing the dishes like ever, so I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, maybe, I'm not sure, but I thought this was an interesting book, but it's not something that I'm really going to take to heart. I mean, I was just listening to it at work when I wanted a bit of a distraction from the boring tasks that I had to do. Going into my Ghibli-a-thon reads, the first books I read were Dreaming Sun by Ichigo Takano. I read the first 3 volumes, and I was right the first time when I put this down. I don't like this series. It's about this girl who runs away from home because she feels unloved and unwelcomed in her house. And she goes to live with these 3 dudes. I normally love that trope of the girl going to live with like a bunch of guys. I don't know why, I do, but I feel like this is the worst version of that I've ever seen. I think it's done really poorly. The whole setup is kind of stupid, and all of the characters are kind of stupid. There's a ton of like insta-love, and Asahi has no personality. And this girl who's saying like, oh, I've never been in love before, and she's suddenly falling like in and out of love like really, really quickly with all of these guys. It's actually so ridiculous that it's not even funny. Speaking of funny, the humor wasn't really my thing. I didn't find that funny at all. And then the serious parts with like random court drama and boxing drama I thought were just like boring and stupid. Everything was predictable, and I was just really upset at this because it's something that I feel like I would love, and I just don't. I really don't. I kept reading through volumes 2 and 3 because I was hoping it would get better, and it didn't. And now I just carried all like 7 volumes. I have them behind me somewhere there. Ugh. There. And I'm not even going to pick them up because I was very sad and upset with this one. So not going to be a series that I continue or recommend. I know Shortcake Cake is supposed to be like a similar premise, so hopefully I will like that one better. I haven't tried that one yet, so we'll see. But this completed my Chosen Family challenge. The next book I finished was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and I love this book so much. This is a reread for me, and I loved it when I read it the first time, which I don't even know when that was, but I still love it now. It feels so nostalgic and so fun and whimsical and just magical. It's about a girl who's cursed, and she gets taken in by this eccentric wizard. And the plot in this book is much more slice of life than the plot of the Ghibli movie. And I personally prefer the plot in this book more than the Ghibli movie, but that's also probably because I enjoy slice of life like a lot. It's more of a cute, slow-paced character story in here rather than the super like action-packed war story of the movie. And while there are some things that I like about the movie better than the book, there are definitely things that I like about the book better than the movie. I think the movie did a better job at explaining the relationship between Howl and Calcifer, but I think the book does a better job explaining like Sophie's curse and Howl's personality in general. And I definitely prefer the much more lighthearted plot in this book. I just have so much fun whenever I read this book. I love it so much. It makes me so happy, and I will definitely be rereading this in the future, I'm sure. And this fulfilled the challenge to read the group book. The next book I read is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is about a unicorn who goes on an adventure to try and find where the rest of her people have disappeared to. It's a classic fantasy, so I was sort of expecting something like the Raya Revelations, where it's full of all of the classic tropes with adventures across the land, and I was actually surprised by this. It does contain a lot of tropes, but at the same time it subverts all those tropes. And there's actually a lot of humor in it that I wasn't expecting. It definitely has like the old-timey writing sort of feel of fantasy, and there's a ton of symbolism that I'm sure went over my head for the most part. But I actually ended up really enjoying the story more than I thought I would. It was simple and sweet, and yet also unexpected and just very entertaining. So I'm glad I finally read this book, and this completed my challenge for an otherworldly creature. The next book I read was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Should look that up. This is a super popular new book that's going all over BookTube. It's a love-to-hate relationship between the first son of the United States and a Prince of England. And everyone has been loving it so much, and I am no different. The first thing I want to say though is this is not an Own Voices review. I do not identify as gay or bisexual or as a man or the prince or the first son. So I really can't speak to literally anything in this book, but I can speak to it as a story, and that's what I will do. It's new adult, and I don't really read much new adult, so that in itself was an interesting experience for me. I really loved the characters and all of the relationships. It was so adorable to watch, and it was just so much fun. Everything about this book was a lot of fun. There is a lot of pain, as would be expected in this kind of a book, but the overall feeling that I got from it was just hope. And it makes you feel so positive about the future. The plot is a little bit contrived to make it all end up so like nice and wrapped in a bow, but I don't really mind that because sometimes you just need a happy book. Because it is new adult, be warned that there are quite a few explicit scenes throughout this book. So if that's something you are not comfortable with, then I would not pick it up. But I really loved it a lot. It's getting a lot of positive reviews for good reason, I think. I read the first half in one sitting, literally just sat down and read half of this book. So I think I enjoyed it a little bit. There's not really much I can say on it that hasn't been said already many times better, so if you are not interested in this book yet, then there's not really much that I can say to change your mind. And this fulfilled my challenge for a contemporary book, I think is what the challenge was. The last book that I finished all in one day yesterday was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. This is about a boy from England who travels into the world of the fairy to catch a falling star for his true love, Victoria. There were a couple things about this book that really stood out to me that weren't really dealing with the book in particular. The first one being, like, the first thing written in here is a John Donne poem called Song, and it's the same exact poem as Howl's Curse in Howl's Moving Castle, and I was like, how did it happen where in 1 week I read 2 books that reference the same poem? I don't know. It was actually really interesting seeing how the 2 different books approach this poem in very different ways, but it was completely unexpected. I didn't know that this had anything to do with that poem at all, so that was the first weird thing that I noted about it. The second was this story felt very, very familiar to me, and I wasn't sure why. At one point I was wondering if I had read it as a kid in school, and it wasn't until I finished this book and I turned on the movie on Netflix and realized that I had partially seen that movie before. It was playing in the background during some holiday, so I was sort of watching it and sort of not, so I was sort of aware of the story, and that's why when I was reading this everything felt really oddly familiar. But getting into the book itself, I actually really enjoyed this a lot. I really love the writing style. Neil Gaiman has a really magical sort of writing style. It's very whimsical and very fitting for a fairy tale in the land of the fairy. So I guess that makes sense. The plot was like a typical fairy tale. It's not great, but it's super sweet and enjoyable. I definitely had some problems with the treatment of women sometimes, but it's also written in this way that it feels like it's an old classic fairy tale, and these sort of things happen a lot in old classic fairy tales, even though this was written in 2006, I think, so it's technically not that old. But I don't know, it's sort of in this weird space where I could get upset about these sort of things, or I could just accept it as a fairy tale and just enjoy the story anyway. I mean, it depends how nitpicky you want to be. There's some Stockholm Syndrome stuff in here, and so I don't know, it depends what you're into. If that's not something that you would like to read, probably stay away from it, but if you're okay with just suspending that in the back of your mind for a while and just enjoying a well-written fairy tale, then you could like this book. I liked it enough to keep me reading for a full day to finish it. And this completed my challenge for a Portal Fantasy. There is only one book from my Ghibli-a-thon TBR that I didn't get to finish. I am currently reading it, and that's Heir of Nahran by Michael J. Sullivan. I was going to use this for my borrowed book challenge, but because all of my books were library books, I technically have that challenge covered anyway, so I'd say Ghibli-a-thon was pretty much a success for me. And I had so much fun doing it, being able to combine 2 things that I absolutely love, books and Ghibli movies. It was so great, and I'm definitely going to look forward to it next year. So those are all of the books that I've read so far in June. I'm sure I'm going to be reading more as I have quite a long plane ride next week. I will be in Japan, like I said, so the next couple of videos are going to be pre-filmed. So when my bookshelf looks a little bit different than how it does now, and when I'm talking about Ghibli-a-thon as if it hasn't happened yet, you will know why. I am definitely going to be vlogging in Japan, so you can look forward to a travel vlog at some point in like mid-July when I get back and when I have time to put it all together. I am so excited to go, and if you have any suggestions for what I should do in Japan or food, tell me all of the food that I need to eat in Japan, because that's like probably what I'm most excited about. And I'm definitely open to restaurant suggestions or food type suggestions. Just tell me everything. Thank you in advance, and I will see you later. Bye.
You're recording.
Yeah. Great. Quality content.